Corporations are people, my friend. We've all heard it, Mitt Romney's reference to corporate personhood. And we've heard a lot about corporate personhood, how it has horrible implications for campaign finance reform, how taking the rights of natural persons and giving them to legal persons undermines the rights of natural persons. Time and time again, we've been warned about corporate personhood. Yet for all we've heard and all those warnings, it has happened. For better or for worse, corporations are people, my friend. But in their desire for personhood, it's possible that corporations overlooked what it actually means to be a person in society. As we all know, it isn't a matter of infinite rights. There are responsibilities as well. So corporations fought for this power, and they got it. They got this great power. The question is, how can we use it to force them to take responsibility? Corporations are often in the position of violating human rights because they form partnerships with developing countries for their lax governmental regulations, cheap labor, and exploitable resources. But unfortunately, there's no consensus in international law as to how to deal with corporations. They're neither states nor individuals, so there's no way to try them in international law. It has become clear that corporations often violate human rights, and corporate social responsibility has become an important question in an increasingly globalized world. It is a question that I grappled with during a research semester abroad at the KU Leuven in Belgium, and it was during the course of this research that I stumbled across the little-known US alien tort statute. A product of the 1789 Judiciary Act, the U.S. Alien Tort Statute reads in its relevant text, "The district court shall have original jurisdiction of any civil action by an alien for a tort only, committed in violation of the law of nations or a treaty of the United States." Basically, two non-U.S. parties can try each other in a U.S. court for a violation of accepted international law. The statute was originally intended as a sign from the United States as a fledgling country to other countries worldwide that they would uphold international law and that they wouldn't become a haven for criminality or piracy. In its most basic intent, currently, plaintiffs are burdened with the responsibility of proving that an international law has been violated and that the law in question is an accepted international norm. The statute went unused for nearly 200 years until Phil Artiga versus Pena Aurelia in 1986. In Phil Artiga, Paraguayan nationals sued a former member of the Paraguayan police force for his alleged participation in the torture and murder of their family member. The charges were upheld as both torture and murder constitute accepted violations of international law. Since Phil Artiga, the Alien Tort Statute has become a great hope for those hoping to hold corporations responsible for their human rights violations abroad. ATS litigation is particularly promising in corporate cases because it allows oppressed groups to circumvent domestically controlled forums, and it deals in international law without the traditional structure of international forums and without the requirement that involved parties be states or individual actors. Unfortunately, one major obstacle facing those hoping to hold corporations responsible under ATS is that corporate liability is not an accepted international norm. This is where the case of Kiobel versus Royal Dutch Petroleum takes the stage. The original facts of Kiobel are exemplary of the tragic conditions caused by corporations worldwide. The case was filed by Ogani Asayalis against Shell Oil for its alleged participation in the Nigerian government's extrajudicial execution, torture, and crimes against humanity against the Ogani people. One example of such violence is that of the Ogani Nine, a group of 9 environmental activists who were protesting the presence of Shell Oil in Nigeria and who were executed by hanging for their participation in environmental activism. Due to the alleged governmental participation in these crimes, the victims of these crimes had limited domestic forums to which to turn. Ultimately, the plaintiffs turned to the United States and the U.S. Alien Tort Statute. In the original trial before the Second Circuit Court, it was determined that corporations are not liable under the U.S. Alien Tort Statute because to do so has not been an international norm previously. However, the case has moved on to the Supreme Court. In a decision due out this month, the Supreme Court will answer the question of corporate culpability in alien tort cases, a decision which will undoubtedly have enormous implications internationally. The U.S. Alien Tort Statute is a unique form of private international law, and any decision which limits its usage has the potential to severely impede justice. Should the court uphold the decision of the Second Circuit Court in determining that corporations are not culpable under the U.S. Alien Tort Statute, this will effectively remove an important path to justice for victims of corporate human rights abuse. The main argument in support of this outcome is that corporations have never been held liable under international law, and to do so now would violate the original intent of the Alien Tort Statute. However, this view is entirely problematic if we consider the behavior enacted by many corporations, which goes entirely unpunished. Such a decision by the court would send the message to multinationals, particularly extractive industries, that it is safe to forge alliances with autocratic regimes with poor human rights records, as they would be safe from judgment and culpability in the way that states or individuals would be. However, should the court side with the Nigerian plaintiffs, an enormous victory will have occurred in the struggle for corporate culpability for human rights abuse. This decision would mean that oppressed groups worldwide without domestic access to justice could turn to the United States as a last great hope for the recognition of the crimes enacted against them by corporations. So Kiobel is monumental, and depending on the outcome, it has the potential to be devastating. This is true. But I urge you to look beyond what you are told to see. We've been told that corporate personhood is bad, and in many ways it is, but if we examine it further, we see its positive potential. As residents of the United States, issues of corporate personhood may come up every 4 years or so in relation to campaign finance reform. But as a victim of corporate human rights abuse, corporate personhood could mean justice. So in a few weeks, the Supreme Court decision will come out, and maybe they will have decided that corporations are not liable under U.S. Alien Tort Statute. And this result would be devastating. But remember, the Alien Tort Statute went forgotten for nearly 200 years. If such an important law was hidden in our books, imagine what else is there waiting to be found, and with a little creativity, used to hold those who would violate international law responsible for their actions. If we look beyond what we are told to see, we could pave the way from corporate personhood to corporate humanity. And in a world increasingly governed by global capital, should corporations not be held to the same standards and have the same responsibilities as states and natural persons? Thank you.